This is probably the only time I'll ever pay for a business class ticket when flying domestic within Australia. Virgin Australia's value for money proposition cannot be denied. So let me show you what you'd get for the fare you're paying. And let's begin this video in some place called the unofficial happy place.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
And yes, that's right, I am in my unofficial happy place, and this is Adelaide International Airport. When I'm here, it could only mean one thing. I am starting an epic travel series again, so come along with me and I'll tell you what I'm up to. Let's do this.
Everybody just do your thing.
If you're new to my channel, my name's Ryan. Born and bred in Singapore, I now call Australia home. I travel heaps to film and eat, which explains why I'm always in the air and my mouth is always full. From Adelaide today, I'm bound for Melbourne, where I'll spend a few days there stuffing my face silly over and over again. Australia's newest low-cost carrier flies me to Sunshine Coast, where I'll eventually end up in Gympie. A train then takes me from there to Brisbane. The world's most beautiful business class cabin forms the backdrop of my international entry into New Zealand. I get to sample the country's newest train service between Auckland and Hamilton, where I'll then spend the entire day flying towards the southernmost airport in the country. I return to Auckland, where the drama of a cancelled flight saw me stranded in New Zealand for an extra day. Qantas finally attempts to make me feel like home as she takes me back to where I began this eventful journey. Past episodes of this series are now available in the description below. And keep a lookout for future ones. Even better, hit subscribe and the bell icon so you won't miss the next episode going to air. Giving me a like will encourage me to keep the content flowing. So here's the thanks, because your support is very much appreciated. Adelaide Airport has seen significant upgrades ever since blocked off portions of it were reopened after COVID. And this portion I'm referring to is this amazing, airy-looking atrium. It has also added a lot of new dining options which are surprisingly not airport prices. However, don't let this attempt at an Asian street food concept suck you in. One sniff at the cooking aromas permeating from this kitchen, I can safely tell you the grub they serve in there is best reserved for the Western palate. So if you're expecting the clink-clang of woks filled with fragrant Hong Kong street cooking, as the wallpaper suggests, you'd be sorely disappointed. As Australia's other airline, Virgin Australia operates their own lounges in most capital cities except Darwin and Hobart. Their lounges are also glaringly absent from international terminals. So let's say if you're flying to New Zealand from Sydney, sorry darlings, you're gonna have to get your Mac Flat Whites from Mac Cafe together with all the other Mac everyone else. Qantas has the by invitation only Chairman's Lounge. Virgin's equivalent is known simply as Beyond, and they're found in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. Here in Adelaide Airport, we make do with a good old Virgin Australia Lounge. Adelaide as a capital city cops a lot of jokes from the other more vibrant capital cities around the country. One thing you can't joke about is the style of this Virgin Australia Lounge. It's a rare breed because it's one of a kind in Australia. Adelaide was supposed to be the springboard of how the future design language of Virgin lounges was supposed to look like. Then COVID struck. The airline went into administration, new owners took over, and then CEO Paul Scurra suddenly found himself out of a job. And here we are today, an airline which is lean, much smaller, and very, very nimble. There are no immediate plans to refurbish the other Virgin Australia lounges, so they'll remain looking like a plastic surgeon's office, while Adelaide has the distinction of chilling with the vibes of Cafe Del Mar. Qantas has 4 tiers for its lounges. It begins with Qantas Club at the bottom of the food chain, followed by Business Class Lounge above it, then the Chairman's Lounge. At international terminals of Melbourne and Sydney, of course, there's the fantastic first-class lounges. Here at Virgin, things are a lot simpler, with only the hidden beyond lounges at 3 airports and everyone else beneath them. So the food served here is very simple, and depending on time of day, it will be switched accordingly. There are the occasional lounge catering collabs, and Virgin's last partnership was with Betty Burgers, which I did not have the pleasure of trying. Virgin Australia's predecessor was Virgin Blue, which operated as a low-cost carrier. The airline rebranded into Virgin Australia we know today in 2011. It was reconfigured into a full-service airline to rival Qantas, and therefore this expensive project signaled the company's fall into the red for the next decade or so. When COVID hit, despite subsidies from the federal government to keep some key domestic flights in the air, Virgin Australia went into administration because it was unable to keep afloat without a federal government bailout. So why did it not get a bailout like Qantas? Well, for one, the airline was already bleeding money and had not made a profit since 2012. So from an investment point of view, it was not something the taxpayers could take on. With Bain Capital taking over, they are happy to report in 2023, for the first time in more than a decade, the airline has finally turned a profit. This amazing rebound is no doubt helped by the surge in post-COVID travel demand. For a while post-pandemic, the airline cancelled all international flights, which saw their wide-body fleet get snowballed. It is such a sad sight to see the A330s and 777s out of action, sitting on the tarmac baking in the harsh sun. Besides the wide-bodies, the new Virgin Australia has also simplified their mainline fleet into 737s, and the regional subsidiary flying the Airbus A320s and the Fokker 100s. Yep, they got rid of their turboprop ATRs as well. In recent times, international services has been reintroduced to Bali, Nadi, Queenstown, Samoa, and Vanuatu. The airline recently took delivery of the 737 MAX 8, which is supposed to fly to Tokyo. Man, that's a long flight on such a small aircraft. Virgin Australia is the only surviving franchise of the Virgin brand outside Virgin Atlantic. So it's not surprising they have a sizable 75 737-800s in their fleet. This example operating flight VA216 from Adelaide to Melbourne this morning is Victor Uniform Lima, which was first delivered to Virgin Blue in August 2007, making her just under 16.5 years old at the time of writing. She proudly wears the name Ocean Grove, a beautiful little seaside town located on the Bellarine Peninsula in Victoria. I've always found the vibes of the Virgin boarding experience a light, airy, and campy one. I call it the Virgin spirit, where they're a little laid back as compared to Qantas, who takes a rather formal approach when dealing with their customers. I don't exactly have a favorite, because I think it's nice to switch things around once in a while. Virgin Australia's business class is best described as basic. For very short flights like this one between Adelaide and Melbourne, the aircraft assigned is bare bones without any charging ports, let alone USB outlets. I'll share with you towards the end how much I paid for this flight, so make sure you stick around. There are presently a handful of 737s flying around with the refurbished so-called trial cabins. And if you're lucky enough to get in them, it'll give you an idea of what the future business class cabin will look like. The first 3 737 MAX 8s already has this refurbished cabin, which features the long-awaited footrests, in-seat power points, and in-flight Wi-Fi. This cannot come quick enough. There are now only 2 airlines in Australia which offer a pre-departure drink in business class, and Qantas isn't one of them. It was one of those COVID cutbacks which wasn't reinstated. So if you want that pre-pushback OJ, you'd now have to get on a transcontinental flight to Perth from East Coast, and that's the only time Qantas will give it to you. Sad, really. The weather this morning was just absolutely gorgeous. A cloudless blue sky, which is so characteristic of our days down under. Our takeoff from runway 05 would take us towards Mount Barker, and that trajectory would fly us pretty much straight towards Melbourne. On arrival, we would set ourselves up for a southerly approach for Tullamarine, completing this flight in just 65 minutes and clocking a distance of roughly 645 kilometers. Speaking of gorgeous, just look at this stunning view out of my window. For us on the starboard side of the aircraft, taking off from 05 would accord us this vantage point over Adelaide City, and its bordering parklands of course. Those parklands are protected by the way, so no other developments can occur on them, therefore preserving the greenery for all to enjoy. With this happening out of my window, who needs in-flight entertainment? Not me. Speaking of which, the in-flight Wi-Fi streaming wasn't working on this flight, so we were informed to download whatever we needed while we were still on the ground. On our way out of Adelaide and jetting towards the state border with Victoria, we fly past Wellington. No, not the capital of New Zealand, but the town of Wellington in South Australia. This town sits at the end of Murray River, Australia's longest river measuring some 2,508 kilometers. From here, the river empties into Lake Alexandrina. At this point, the cabin gets ready for the meal service, which is always the highlight of any flight for me. Virgin Australia 2.0 is all about doing things simply. There's no need for any celebrity chefs to make their meals palatable. Today I've opted for the pumpkin quiche, which looked very pretty when it arrived. Look, as much as I love to eat, I know there's only so much you can do for a meal to be served at 40,000 feet. And having worked in the industry, I totally understand the logistical challenge. So Virgin 2.0 is all about simple meals done well. There's really no need to glam anything up, and I truly appreciate this lack of pretense. There's nothing worse than using a celebrity chef to pimp up a meal and slugging it with some exotic Asian name which no one can pronounce, and then serving it to the passenger who hails from that very cultural background. Yes, I'm still going on about it. Ugh. Ultimately, a simple meal done well is always preferred. On further referencing of the notes taken for this flight, I believe this was supposed to be a caramelized onion tart and not a pumpkin quiche. I took no hostages on my plate and devoured every single crumb. So here's a thumbs up for the well-deserved catering on Virgin Australia 2.0. As far as international expansion is concerned, there are presently no plans to go beyond what they have now, simply because of the limitations of where you can fly with 737s. Flying from Cairns to Tokyo is just about hitting the limit of a Boeing 737 MAX 8. Long-haul flights are now possible with airline partnerships. Reciprocal frequent flyer benefits have been etched out with Qatar Airways, United Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, ANA, and Air Canada. Whether will Virgin Australia enter an alliance is still the million-dollar question. The logical step would be Star Alliance, because there's a huge void for that alliance in this part of the world. Suppose the forward plans for Virgin Australia is now to be cautious and not to be an airline it wasn't meant to be, slugging it out with Qantas in an unwinnable boxing match. Virgin Australia flight VA216 is now drawing to a close. Suppose this is a perfect time for me to summarize my thoughts about Virgin Australia 2.0 and what this means for Australia. There's no denying this new version of Virgin Australia works. It's gone all Jenny Craig. It went on a slimming journey and it's now trim, nimble, and in a much better position to tackle the future. But it has come at a huge price. Transcontinental flights are now 100% narrow body, which means your longer international red-eye flights are also performed by these single-aisle domestic configured aircraft. And there's just no way to sugarcoat the experience. It is substandard. For much longer flights to USA, Middle East and Europe, partnering with other international airlines has somewhat softened the harsh experience. Which is why instead of waging a war with the incumbent, Virgin Australia has priced themselves as such because they know where they stand. This flight between Adelaide and Melbourne was a business promo fare, which set me back 349 Australian dollars one way. That got me 2,617 points and 55 status credits. On this same sector, Qantas would be charging you an average of 500 Australian dollars on a business saver fare, which will nab you 1,700 points and 40 status credits. It is imperative that Virgin Australia thrives in Australia because we need a choice. For far too long, we've been held captive by the high fares of Qantas with nothing much to show for it besides filling up the pockets of boardroom members and C-level execs. Because on these 737s, the business class between both airlines, when you squint your eyes really hard, is really a mishmash of the same product. Recliner seats with little recline, lounge access, priority boarding, warm meals and the likes. But the price difference is what places Virgin Australia ahead, because this is what I think the true value of these seats are, and I will happily continue to pay for them. I genuinely wish Virgin Australia all the best for the future, and from what I can tell, it is looking really bright. So let's arrive into Melbourne Tulla and take this video to a close. Well guys, welcome back to Melbourne. I'm glad to be back. And yeah, that was Virgin Australia, flight number 1 of this trip. Yeah, as usual, I mean Virgin Australia, they're always great, and I have no huge complaints about the service today. The flight attendant was just so excellent, piling us with drinks non-stop, all there for a 1-hour flight. So yeah, no huge complaints. So as usual, I'm here in Melbourne for the next 2.5 days and look forward to a comprehensive foodie review about my trip here in Melbourne, okay? And this signals the start of my trip that's gonna take me to Queensland. I'll end up in Brisbane where I'll fly across to New Zealand, and I'm going up and down from North Island to the south and back to the north again, so make sure you watch out for those videos, okay? So in the meantime, I will say goodbye to you here, and I've chucked details of my Instagram on your screen right now. So make sure you hit me up there, chuck me a follow, so you can actually see where am I traveling to in real time. And of course, more importantly, do not forget to hit the subscribe and the bell notification icon. And take care all of you, and I'll see you for my next video. Bye!